Well, Tom, I'd like it if markets determined, but if you put enough engines on it, you can get a bathtub airborne. You put enough money into it, you can make any technology appear cost-effective. And for better or for worse, that has been our national energy policy for at least 30 years. We subsidize energy enormously, and as a result have the mess that we're in today. I'm going to suggest there are better ways to approach this and that we need to hurry. Because we live in very interesting times, yeah? The iconic American business is bankrupt. Be nice, yeah? And there are several looming catastrophes out there, the personal credit card debt, the commercial real estate market. If we're not very careful, we could be right back into it. We call it a recession. You could call it a spiral of impossibility where, because of public perception, we get worse and worse and worse. Now, we're hoping right now that because of public perception, we're on an upward spiral. Public perception, as you all well know, is fickle. You think? And these numbers are old. Here in California, in parts of the state, we've got unemployment of over 25%. Detroit, same problem. Unemployment numbers are going to dramatically impact policy. It's going to impact whether or not you guys have a job. That's for sure. So as we think about energy policy, there are other policies that we need to bear in mind. I'm going to talk about how do we achieve prosperity in companies, in communities. How do we achieve competitiveness? How do we manage risk? How do we manage the global challenges facing us? And how do we achieve security? We're now fighting wars. Our young men and women are in harm's way. And how do we ensure genuine security here in our communities? How do we make state policies smarter? How do we overcome the barriers that face many of the entrepreneurs who are trying to bring these new technologies to market? How do we make markets work? I believe that the fundamental unsustainability in the way in which we've been doing business is the root cause of the financial collapse that we've just been through. And unless we understand this and put in place policies that are smart because of this, we will simply face collapse after collapse after collapse. Why? Because this country is now borrowing $2 billion a day to buy imported oil. We're borrowing it largely from the Chinese and the sovereign wealth funds of the Middle East to buy oil in competition with the Chinese from the sovereign wealth funds of the Middle East. This is daft. This is our national energy policy. What you believe, the mental model that you carry in your head determines what you do. When you checked in yesterday, you saw this map, or a small portion of it. This is the map that was given to the early Spanish explorers when they came to this part of the world. And you look at the Caribbean, where they originated. Florida's a little fat, but Cuba's pretty good, and the Yucatan looks about right. But when you get out to California, you got a little problem. True story. And, you know, literally, when you go back to the Four Seasons, look at the map behind the reg counter. That's this map. The first guys over the Sierra Mountains carried boats because they believed they were going to find a beach. They found a lot of sand. What you believe will determine what you do. How many of you have read this book? One of you, a couple of you. Here's your homework, guys. This was the #1 best-selling book for all of 2007, a good bit of 2008. Nassim Taleb, despite being insufferably arrogant, was one of the few people to accurately predict the financial collapse. He takes the title from the story. In the old world, England, swans were white, till some fool bumped into Australia, found these very large birds that were, well, black. And they said, those aren't swans. Swans are by definition white, until the ornithologist said, sorry, they're swans. At which point people said, oh yeah, we knew that. Thereby failing to learn whatever lesson might have been there for them. Taleb says everything that matters in history, in business, in innovation, and in your personal life is like that. You didn't predict it until it happened. Unlike the bird, it changed everything. And he says these low probability, high impact events are accelerating. The winners will be those who are prepared to accept this notion, expose themselves to the information that allows them, when one of these things pops their head up, to go, ooh, swan, and then rigorously exploit them. How many of you would have invested in these guys? Particularly the 13-year-old down in the corner, who, by the way, a week or so back came out and said that climate change is now the most serious problem facing the planet. We're facing some formidable swans. Now, maybe these aren't swans because you can put a name to them. But we're losing every major ecosystem on the planet. Read the UN Millennium Ecosystem Assessment Report. We live in a carbon-constrained world. Economic instability, well, yes. Volatile energy prices, they're headed back up. Any of you read the recent IEA reports, International Energy Agency? There's a little less oil than we perhaps thought there was. China and India are in the world market for essentially all resources. Water, that will be the next big resource crisis, much worse to solve than energy. And we have no markets in saved water yet. Food, we've had food riots on 3 continents. And then what I call the sustainability imperative. When I'm done, you can tell me if this is good news or not. But collectively, these will change everything about how you do business, how your constituents do business, how the world as a whole does business. You don't have any choice about these. Our choice is how to respond to them. Now, you can say science is uncertain. Absolutely, that's what science is. They pose hypotheses, somebody criticizes it, it moves on. Here's the science I like. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Now, I say this with all deference to the great scientists. We're in a school of environmental science. But let's assume that the skeptics are right. Climate change is a hoax. Frankly, don't go to Vegas on the odds that's true. But if all you care about is being a profit-maximizing capitalist, you'll do exactly the same thing you'd do if you were scared to death about climate change. So let's quit arguing about the science and get on to making some money. DuPont, 10 years ago, announced they were cutting their emissions of greenhouse gases 65% below their 1990 levels by 2010. DuPont joined Greenpeace? They made this announcement in the name of increasing shareholder value. They've done fairly well. They're 80% below for a savings between 2000 and 2005 of $3 billion. And by the way, those of you furiously scribbling, I'm going to provide you guys this show. You can post it to the website. Andrew Winston, author of Green Recovery, points out that DuPont's eco-efficiency is now saving at $2.2 billion a year. That was the same as their net income, 2003, 2007. Here's a company that's profitable because it's squeezing out waste. They're not the edge of the envelope. ST Micro may be. In the same time frame, pledged carbon neutrality, zero net CO2 emissions, with a 40-fold increase in production. When their CEO, Pasquale Pastorio, made this pledge, he had no earthly idea how to achieve it. This is what you call a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. In the words of Jim Collins, author of Good to Great, Built to Last, what they found was it drove their corporate innovation. It took them from the number 12 chip maker in the world to the number 6. They're gaining market share. They're winning awards. They reckon by the time they're done, they'll have saved about $1 billion. My staff walked into a little company that had 6,300 computers and monitors they left on 24/7 because of some urban myths. Oh, it shortens the life to turn it off and turn it on. No. IT needs it left on. No. And by the way, I've been going around outside and turning off those bloody space heaters. We're heating outer space. This is pure waste. In this company, just publishing a policy, turn your computer off if you're not sitting in front of it, saved the company $700,000 the first year. This is free money. Nationally, we waste $2.8 billion buying and burning energy to power computers that have nobody sitting in front of them. And that's a significant part of the cost of running a typical office building. We walked into another building, a 7 million square foot distribution center, big warehouse, floor-to-ceiling boxes, 500-watt light bulbs shining down on the tops of boxes. The guys down below had task lighting so they could see where they were going. We said, y'all have a switch? $650,000. Company after company after company. Cut your waste, enhance your bottom line. It should not surprise us that our Asian and European competitors who are signatories to the Kyoto Protocol use half as much energy to produce a unit of GNP as we do. This is a competitiveness issue. It's also a community issue. Over 1,000 mayors have pledged to abide by the Kyoto Protocol. Now, when we helped negotiate that, none of us thought of cities or states. This was an agreement in theory amongst the world's national governments. Mayors said, we don't care. We're doing it. Why? Because a typical community is bleeding to death trying to buy energy. You spend about 20% of gross income on energy, most of it from outside, so 80% of those dollars leave. This is reverse economic development. It's easy to solve. A man named Wes Birdsall was the general manager of the Osage, Iowa Municipal Utility. Now, Osage is hardly the hotbed of industrial innovation in the United States, but he did an interesting thing as a business leader. He stepped across the meter to his customer's side to say, I'm going to help you use less of my product. Why? Because he realized you don't want kilowatt hours of electricity. You wouldn't know what to do with one. It walked up and bit you. What you want are the services that energy delivers, cold beer, hot showers, industrial shaft power. If he can get you those cheaper through efficiency than through new supply, that's the way to go. He wound up saving $1 million a year in this small rural town. Cut energy bills to half that of the state average, unemployment to half that of the national average. With the lower bills, more factories came to town. That raised his demand. He went back and did more efficiency. Efficiency is low-hanging fruit that grows back. These light bulbs are not state-of-the-art light bulbs. And for those of you based in California, the California Lighting Technology Center can show you how to magically illuminate a space using probably a quarter, maybe a tenth the energy of what we've got going in this room. This may have been state-of-the-art when it was done, but state-of-the-art moves on. Per megawatt saved in a community, you will generate over $2 million in increased economic activity, over $500,000 in increased wages, and increased jobs. 10 times the number of jobs generated by energy efficiency and renewable energy that you get from investing in any central station plant. If what we want, remember that unemployment number? If what we want are jobs for Americans, this is how you achieve it. You also get a better return on investment than you will get from any other investment in the economy. 40% on changing out these light bulbs, 40% on sealing leaks in ductwork. Check out, this was done before the collapse. Would really like to be getting 4.2% now. Is your stocks making any money for you? If you have money, either as an individual, as a company, as a state, this is where you ought to be investing it. Cities are. Salt Lake achieved in 2005 30% reduction below its 2001 baseline, has a goal of 3% reduction a year. This is on a par with what the science tells us we need to reduce. City of Olympia, Washington, cut their emissions 30% since 2005. If we do it right, we'll be saving money and reducing our carbon footprint. St. Paul, saving money. $37 billion from their carbon reductions. Burlington, Vermont. It's an innovative program. They're leasing the light bulbs. This was back when the cost of one of these CFLs was 15 or 20 bucks. People didn't want to upfront the cost, so the utility did. It takes them back. You now have a recovery program for them. I like Babylon, New York. They defined carbon dioxide emissions as a solid waste. They're now able to regulate it under their trash laws. Created 6,600 new jobs. Radnor Township, Pennsylvania, they're buying wind power as a township. City of Sebastopol set a greenhouse gas reduction goal of 42% by this year. Why? Because it saves them money. And check out the internal rate of return. 73%. People say, oh, I got to have a 6-month payback. I got to have a 2-year payback. You know what a 2-year payback is? It's about a 70% rate of return. You would not demand that of any other investment in the society. Why do we demand it of efficiency and renewables? Small business. Commercial buildings, 18% of total energy used. Improving lighting is one of the easiest, least expensive ways. You can get savings of up to 75%. These simple measures go directly to the entrepreneur's pockets. So a credit union in Des Moines, Iowa implemented lighting efficiency, more efficient heating, ventilating, air conditioning, saved a third of their energy. This is a graphic design company in Washington, D.C. Realized that many of their devices, their appliances, are actually drawing power even when they are off, called phantom load. So they put everything on power strips. When they leave at the end of the day, they flick it off. Cut their electricity bill from $220 to $90 a month. Again, free money. Real estate office down in Florida got out some rocket science called a caulk gun. Saved about $7,900 a year. Policy innovations. A city clerk in the city of Berkeley, California, realized that they do tax-based financing for things like putting power lines underground or cleaning up an alleyway. The property owners come to the city, get some money, do whatever it is they want to do, and they pay it back out of a slight increase in their property tax. Not everybody else's, just the affected properties. City clerk said, why don't we do it for solar? Berkeley became the first city to do this, called Berkeley First. It went into effect in November of 2008. Trial program, $1 million, sold out in 9 minutes. I was in London shortly after the city clerk thought this up, and a UC Berkeley professor came running into this meeting with the 8 largest institutional investors on the planet, said, Hunter, do you know what Berkeley's done? Told me about this. I got on the phone, called the county commissioners where I live, said, Will, we got to do this. He said, I've heard about it. Boulder, Colorado became the second. Palm Desert. Panama, how many are there now? And states around the country are looking at this scheme as a way of enabling your cities to provide financing for citizens, businesses, to begin implementing renewable energy and energy efficiency. This is simply a brilliant innovation. If your state doesn't permit it, shame on you. And look what you get. Sonoma County put this in place. They already had set some pretty good emissions reduction targets. Efficiency first. Efficiency, 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 10 times. And then look at new supply. Look at policy like transit. 100 million loan program, 8.4% increase this year in their construction trades. Neighboring Napa that does not have this program, 3% decline. Bay Area as a whole, 2% decline. More jobs. Because of the program, solar companies are locating now in Sonoma, creating jobs. Braddock, Pennsylvania, Rust Belt town, they're dying. They went from 20,000 people to 2,000. The mayor said, we're not going to die, we're going to go green. They started taking vacant lots and growing feedstock for biodiesel, converted in a 100-year-old third-generation oil company. Remember, oil was discovered in Pennsylvania? Bringing in renewable energy companies, growing organic vegetables they can sell at a high price point to the high-end restaurants in Pittsburgh. Per $1 million investment in electric efficiency, 17 jobs, $670,000 in wage and salary. The American Society of Mechanical Engineers, now these guys are not liberals. Coal and natural gas technology, 11 job years, wind and solar, 100 to 121 job years created for the same amount of money invested. Take your choice. In Colorado, our governor several years ago ran on the campaign of unleashing the new energy economy. He's done rather well. The Colorado economy shows it. We have relatively lower unemployment than surrounding states because we have been creating these green jobs. 91,000 green jobs created. You know how many coal miner jobs there are in the country? 85,000. If you want to transition, let's just buy these guys out, pension them off, take some of the savings stream, and help this industry transition. Why are we allowing it to hang up our opportunity at prosperity? LADWP has said we're not going to buy any more coal-fired power. When our contracts run out, we're looking for clean power. Ontario, Canada, we're shutting them down. We just released a study showing that if you have a brand new shiny coal plant sitting there, and you take the income you can make from various credits, the income from the water, because many of these central stations are very water intensive. Remember I said water is the next resource crisis? You take that money, you invest it in efficiency and invest it in renewables, you get a net present value positive today. Cost effective to shut these things down. Now, are we going to do it overnight? No, that would be silly. But let's start looking at the real numbers. When you combine efficiency and renewables, you get a very attractive package. It's been done. Sacramento, some years back, the people voted to shut down the badly operating nuke. It was costing them too much money. The numbers are in. The entire region's economically healthier than had they just run the plant. Had they run the plant, rates were projected to go up 80%. They held rates level over a decade. This kept in place 2,000 jobs of companies that said if the rates go up, we're leaving. They generated 880 new jobs, and the utility paid off its debt. Sacramento did an interesting thing last year. They put on the bills that they send you, little smiley faces or little frowny faces, depending on whether your energy use is higher or lower than your neighbor's. People hated it. They hated the frowny faces. Big outcry, cut 2% energy use at no cost. Now, maybe we have to get a little cleverer about how you do community engagement. People really, really don't like those frowny faces. What do? This is a house doctor. This is a person who will come to your home, your business, and put in place a big sheet of plastic with a fan in it. The fan either positively or negatively pressurizes your house. Person then walks around with, well, this is what you get as a result, a nice little printout. They walk around with this guy. It's a little thermograph. If I pointed it at one of these light bulbs, it would look like flame is shooting out of it. And when you have this blower door in your house, you just walk around. And you point it at where the roof and the wall come together, where the floor and the wall come together, where your windows are. Most of us have enough little cracks in our homes to amount to leaving a window open year-round. Now, those of you who are whining about the cold winter, plug your darn leaks. You'll have more comfortable homes. You'll have money in your pocket. Here's the program that we're instituting now in Boulder called 2 Techs and a Truck, because this is what you get when an auditor comes to your house. Everybody likes energy audits, yeah? They're useless. Any of you had them done? Did you then do anything because of it? Probably not much. You look at all these numbers, you go, So suppose when the audit is to be done, a couple guys show up, a couple gals show up, they have a blower door, and they have somebody following right along the thermograph with a Colt gun. Oh, good idea. It happens right at the point at which you're doing the energy audit. Costs almost no more than doing the energy audit. You just need a guy with a Colt gun, 2 guys in a truck. You've now employed a couple guys. You then leave them a report, preferably a somewhat more intelligent report that actually outlines what are the follow-on measures, who are the people who can do it. People call you up. When I moved into my house, I had everybody calling me, welcome wagons, selling me everything except efficiency. In Boulder County, which is supposed to be one of the greenest counties in the country. Come on, we can do better. This is Eric Daub. He came in and put insulation in my house. Surprise, in Colorado, I had a house that had an almost uninsulated attic. Ooh, it was built in the 80s when energy was cheap. There's the house. Here's its solar panels. My house is energy independent. And in a rural area, that's not a bad thing to be. I have a battery bank that can be grid interconnected most of the time. If the grid goes down, I cut loose and I stand alone and I keep on running. If we want independence in this country, we can do it. Now, I have land. If you don't, how about neighborhood aggregation? In many states, that's now illegal. Here's your homework. Go make it legal. We know what to do. Photovoltaics are cost-effective right now. Prior to the collapse, we were building a megawatt a week of the things here in Southern California. Southern California Edison built a 250 megawatt power plant on roofs spread around the county at a price point, $875 million, eerily close to the $800 million it would have cost to build a coal plant up in Montana that was canceled. We've had state utility commissions in Kansas, Wyoming, Montana cancel coal plants because they said they are no longer the cheap option. They are under a legal requirement to dispatch the cheapest power. Coal ain't it anymore. Sorry. Moore's law applies to solar. The prices are coming down at a great rate. And we're not the leaders. Sorry. People say we're going to be the Saudi Arabia of solar. Well, the Arabs said, thank you, we're going to be the Saudi Arabia of solar. They're building an entire city entirely run off renewables, car-free. Denmark has an island entirely run on wind power and biofuels. Wind, second fastest growing energy technology around the world after solar. And that's actually a wrong number. The number is 37 gigawatts of new wind last year around the world. 10 gigawatts in this country. A gigawatt is roughly a nuclear-sized chunk of electricity. Did you notice? If we'd have built 17 nukes, you would have noticed. And I've never heard anybody call for an evacuation plan from a wind farm. Oh, and check out China. China has surpassed the U.S. as the world wind power. They are too. You got that right. China. If China, Lester Brown points out, China continues to grow economically at the rate that it has. And folks say if it doesn't, it faces revolution. By 2030, they're going to want more oil than the world now lifts or probably can ever lift. And more cars, coal, cotton, concrete. The future's not possible. When you smack up against the future's not possible, you're looking at a driver of change. It's going to change. We may not, standing here today, know how. My crystal ball is exceeding cloudy these days. But we know they're going to change. This is a black swan poking its head up. They are changing. This is a megawatt grid integrated on a roof in China. Whoa, and it's pretty. Rizhao, China. City of 3 million people, over 90% of them use solar hot water. Why? Because they have located in the town the companies manufacturing these things for export. They are looking at the California market. How many people in California have solar hot water? 3%. In California. In Pasadena in the 1930s, 30% or more had solar hot water. This is not a novel technology. Baoding, China, the young mayor woke up one morning to find that the lake that the city surrounded had died because of the industrial toxins being poured into it. Millions of fish floating. He said, polluting first and cleaning up later is very expensive. We're going green. He is recruiting renewable energy companies to come to what is now called China's Electric Valley to replace the sunset industries. The 11th Party Congress in China passed what's called the Circular Economy Initiative. This is a concept of industrial ecology, of you don't take resources, use them for a little while and throw them away. Of all the stuff that makes up gross national product, it's pretty gross, less than 1% of it is ever put into a product and is still there 6 months after sale. All the rest is waste. We are an incredibly wasteful country, society. And the Chinese have said we're going to close those loops. They're putting solar on yurts, building integrated photovoltaics. First Solar, an Arizona company, was hired to build a 2-gigawatt facility in Mongolia. This is solar photovoltaic. E-Solar, a little company in Southern California, was hired to build a 2-gigawatt solar thermal plant. Now, people say, well, you can't have solar where the sun don't shine. Solar thermal takes the sun, makes hot water, runs it through a turbine. You can store that heat. Yes, you can have solar when the sun don't shine. Ed Kahn at Lawrence Berkeley showed years ago, you take 2 of any 3 of solar, wind, and hydro, you have a more reliable grid than a central station-based grid. Yes, we can. Now think about this from a national competitiveness standpoint. Go back to the first industrial revolution when we invented commerce and markets and used water power to make iron and textiles. Where did that happen? Come on, guys, history. Charles Dickens. The first industrial revolution. Where did it happen? London, England. And England ruled the world. The British Navy ruled the waves. And then James Watt and the steam engine, and trains and steel. Power, political, economic, and military power follows innovation. Then some fool found oil in Pennsylvania, and Henry Ford built a car, and Thomas Edison built a light bulb, and General Electric. And power shifted across the Atlantic. And we have innovated. Petrochemicals and the space race and the IT revolution gave us all these little things in our pockets with 3,000 songs on them. I really didn't know I needed one until I needed one. And now I can't imagine living without it. What's next? What is our economy going to be based upon? We all going to be burger flippers? This really is the choice that you as legislators face. as the stewards of public policy, what's next for this country? I think if we want to be a dynamic, growing industrial economy, it will be the technologies that will solve these drivers of change. It will be the green technologies. It will be renewable energy and energy efficiency and nanotechnology, perhaps, and all of the technologies that this country invented and that, with a few exceptions now, we yet lead in, and that without exception we are allowing to go overseas because we have failed to put in place the entrepreneurial environment that allows the inventors, the entrepreneurs, to flourish here. You know who's the world's first green billionaire? He's Chinese. Tom Friedman, you read this article? Applied Materials, San Jose-based company, will this year open 14 manufacturing facilities making the gear that makes solar panels. How many in the U.S.? 0. Have a nice day. This is not a left or a right issue. We're not red or blue here. I defy any one of you to be more market-oriented than I am, or indeed more conservative. I own what is federally defined as an arsenal. This cowboy hat was made by the same man made George Bush's hat. I come by these credentials real honestly. My friend Jim Woolsey does too. He used to run the CIA. He drives a plug-in hybrid car fueled by the solar panels on his roof with a bumper sticker on the back says, "Osama bin Laden hates my car." Jim sees this as a national security issue, and I think he's right. You want to talk daft? We're funding both sides of the war on terror. We pay for our guys, and then we buy oil from the guys who pay for the other guys. Next time you read of one of our young men and women who's been killed, think about that. Think about that when you put oil in your car. And think about this, too. This man's not a liberal neither. Matt Simmons is a Houston oil banker. You want nightmares, read this book. He says the production history of the supergiant oil fields looks very like a theory put forth in the 1950s by a man named M. King Hubbert. Hubbert was a shell geologist. He said if you have exponentially growing demand, 90% of the oil ever used by people's been since 58, half of it since 84. He said you fall off the production curve as steeply as you went up when you've extracted half the oil. We're not running out of oil. What we're running out of is the ability to produce it at a cheap price point. Okay, drill, baby, drill. Well, you don't get much. We could have oil at over $200 a barrel tomorrow if some of the guys who have tried this before get successful and take out the oil loading arms at Ras Tanura and Juaima in Saudi Arabia. Some of you may have seen a piece done by Frank Sesno on CNN a couple years back called "Out of Oil, We Were Warned," which posited a hurricane in the Gulf, a couple of refineries down for repairs, and the guys at Saudi get lucky. And then followed it out over the next couple months, what it would do to our economy. It is not pretty. This is another black swan. Now, we've gone a long time without it happening. So there is a tendency of all of us to say, oh, it's not going to happen. You willing to bet your constituents on that? If you want off oil, the way to do it is the vehicle fleet. A lot of miles are going to work, over a quarter of them, and most are in single occupancy vehicles. So policies to encourage people out of single occupancy vehicles make sense, but we're going to have to go a little further. We're not the only ones on this planet. And the Chinese have promised to have half their population middle class by 2020. That means owning a car. China could have as many cars on its roads by 2050 as there are on planet Earth today, with India right behind them. We're going to have to solve this one. We can make changes. We used to be able to go from Boston to St. Louis in this country on trolley cars. In Copenhagen and Amsterdam, tens of thousands of people commute by bicycle. High-speed trains. The Chinese are building 30,000 miles of high-speed trains. How many are we building in this country? I think there's one going between Orlando and Tampa. I guess you got to get to Disney World in a hurry. Car sharing programs. These are very successful. Scott Bernstein, Center for Neighborhood Technologies in Chicago, points out that when a family enters a car sharing program, within a year they sell their second car. UPS. A little innovation. Okay, we're not going to turn left. Can you imagine the room in which the guy said this? Do what? They used software so that they concentrically go to the right. Not sitting there waiting to turn left, reduced accidents, cut their vehicle miles, saved them a boatload of money. Hybrid UPS trucks. They're not alone. FedEx, Walmart, a lot of companies are going to hybrid trucks. Well, then the Germans are going car-free. If you still want to drive your car, we know how to make them that get 100 miles a gallon. They're on the road today. I was on the podium with Branson and Clinton when Branson announced he was putting the profits of the Virgin Group into non-carbon fuel. And the media came running up, said, why? He said, look, I run an airline. We live in a carbon-constrained world. I need fuel. You can home make the stuff. And subsidized corn is distilled in 150-year-old technology is probably not the smart technology. The lipid algae are some of my favorite. Branson's already flown a plane on biofuel. You know, he blends it with jet fuel. It flew just fine. It's real important, though, we make very sure that we source the feedstocks sustainably. Otherwise, you're just problem switching. And agriculture's in trouble, too. Here's a whole new business model. Young man named Shai Agassi, California by way of Israel, or Israel by way of California. He's done a deal with the Danish oil and natural gas company. By 2012, they are rolling out 100,000 Renault electric cars. How come they're not Fords? $12,000, you get a brand new car. It's a mobile phone business model. He doesn't want to sell you the car. What he's selling you is the service of changing out your battery. In a little station that looks like this. You drive in the same amount of time it takes you to fill your car with gasoline, a little robot arm comes out, grabs the battery, slaps a new one in. Those little panels on the south are solar. They're charging the batteries while you're not using them. He owns the batteries. He is selling you the motive power. Why aren't we doing that here? Why does he have to go to Denmark and Israel? Now, he's talking now with Hawaii. That'd be a good thing for your islands. Here's what the Europeans are doing. This is a pan-European smart grid proposed in part by Siemens and a number of other companies. Big wind off the North German and Danish coasts, wave power off the Scottish coasts. Scotland wants to be the Saudi Arabia of wave. Portugal has wave power operating now. Solar across North Africa, biomass across the south of Europe, distributed generation everywhere, all plugged into a smart grid, into smart houses, into smart cars. The companies that do this are the ones who are innovating. And we're trying to bail out Hummer. Dong and Siemens just did a deal, 500 offshore wind turbines, because the CEO of Siemens said, our goal is to grow faster than the market in order to become one of the top 3 suppliers. They're kind of pretty. Well, California has a Tesla. We're not the leaders. We like to think of America as, we're the best. Sorry, no, we're not. Again, we invented all this technology. We are letting other people eat our lunch. As 3M once said, I'd like to eat my own lunch, thank you. The little store, the little general store in Hygiene, Colorado, has an electric car charger. Do your communities? Then you get the inevitable question, yes, but is there a business case? This is all visionary stuff. Yeah, there's a business case, and I think you ignore it at your peril. The 800-pound gorilla, Walmart's going green. Trust me, they are not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. They're going green because they're making money. And they have pledged to be 100% renewable, zero waste, carbon neutral, and sell only sustainable products. First 2 years of just squeezing out waste in packaging in one line saved them $11 billion. You notice the difference between a normal refrigerator cabinet and the one on top? This is rocket science. They shut the door. They put doors on it. They also noticed that most refrigerator cabinets that have light bulbs inside of them, most light bulbs are actually heaters. So Walmart said LEDs do really well in cold environments. That's why, by the way, Anchorage is putting LEDs all over the place. They put LEDs inside the refrigerator cabinets. Then they said, wait a minute, why are the lights even on if nobody's in front of them? Let's put a motion detector. Now what they didn't realize is the kids love it. They run up to the cabinet, boink, the lights go on. Where the kids are, the parents are, Walmart sells more stuff. October 2008, they called together in Beijing their 1,000 largest Chinese suppliers, and they said, if you want to sell to us, here's what you will do. You will abide by this Walmart index. Question number 1, have you measured your carbon footprint? Question number 2, have you reported it through the Carbon Disclosure Project? The who? CDP, this is a group of young people out of the United Kingdom who about 10 years ago, just because, sent out to the 500 largest companies on earth a little survey saying, what's your carbon footprint? Now, as you might imagine, for the first couple of years, everybody ignored it until about 3-4 years ago when 60% of the biggest companies on earth answered the kids' survey. Why? For one thing, they represent institutional investors with $55 trillion in assets. If you're going to go to the capital marketplace, better answer their question. For another, under Sarbanes-Oxley, the U.S. corporate ethics law, if as a manager you fail to disclose to shareholders information that can materially affect the value of stock, you can be personally criminally liable. What's your carbon footprint? CDP now reckons that 6% of leading companies deselect suppliers who don't manage their carbon footprint. And 56% of them say they're gonna in the future. This is what Walmart is doing. If you don't manage your carbon footprint, don't bother trying to sell to us. Risk mitigation. How will legislation, Walmart, the SEC disclosure, y'all know about that? A month or so back, the SEC issued a guidance to companies on how to report their climate liability. 66% of consumers consider a business's practices in deciding what to buy. 80% are concerned about the global environment. And 51% have proactively changed their daily behavior. We are in the midst of a profound shift in how people think about these issues. Yeah, people want prosperity, security, meaning in their life. The American people haven't changed all that much. But they also want it clean. Here's the rest of the Walmart scorecard. Have you established publicly available sustainability purchasing guidelines? Have you, as a state? Do you invest in community development in the markets you source from or operate within? Walmart, this is the evil empire. They are also probably the single biggest pusher of sustainability now on the planet. They are the driving force. And maybe it's not a surprise. Sam Walton, Said incrementalism is innovation's worst enemy. We don't want continuous improvement, we want radical change. I'm writing a book right now called Climate Capitalism, profiling a lot of this, and it is deviling me. I cannot keep up with Walmart. Every month or so they announce a new policy. The announcement this week is that Safeway has joined Walmart's consortium of companies working on these issues. Well, if you want to play with the regulators, Jackson came out, carbon dioxide's a hazardous pollutant. That legally obliges the EPA to regulate it. Yes, there are people trying to overturn that. You want to stake your company's future on that success? The two circuit courts of appeal last fall held that individuals have standing to sue you if you don't manage your carbon footprint. Sure, you can stave off any one of these forces. You can't stave them all off. And remember, it's cost effective to manage your carbon footprint. Florida, the Republican governor said, what would it cost us? I guess he'd been reading the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition that showed the Marlins baseball player up to his waist in water. So what would it cost us? He was quite surprised when the numbers came back. It wouldn't cost, it would save. Aggressive campaigns in Florida add $28 billion in net economic savings between now and 2025. California, fully implementing AB 32, add $76 billion to the state economy, which at the moment's broke, and create over 400,000 new jobs. There are 20 separate studies, state by state by state by state, by the Center for Climate Strategies, showing in every instance aggressive action to reduce emissions drives your economic prosperity. The companies on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index have been outperforming the general market. Those radical, wild-eyed environmentalists at Goldman Sachs came out with a report showing that the companies that are the leaders in environment, social, and good governance policy have 25% higher stock value. Economist Intelligence Unit, companies with the highest share price growth over the past 3 years paid more attention to sustainability. Conversely, the worst performing companies in the economy most likely to have nobody in charge of sustainability. A.T. Kearney, even after the collapse, the businesses deemed sustainability focused were well protected from value erosion. Difference in market capitalization between the sustainability leaders and the laggards, averaging $650 million market cap. We know how to design cities that restore capital, not just financial and manufactured, the forms of capital that we measure with GDP. Any of you know what GDP really is? You know, he who dies with the most toys wins, yeah? Assuming that you discount all spiritual values. But let's take that as a given. He who dies with the most toys wins. GDP doesn't measure whether you have the most toys. It measures the speed with which you're buying toys. It's a metric of the throughput of money and stuff in our economy. We all say if the GDP goes up, oh cool. If a divorcing cancer patient gets in a car wreck, she has added to the GDP. Is she any better off? Clearly not. How do we enhance all forms of capital? Natural capital, human capital, and financial and manufactured, thereby to be able to create more wealth. There's a very important role for y'all. Now, I've talked a lot about what companies are doing, and I truly believe in markets. I think markets will drive the solution. I think your job is to steer, not row, to guide. But it's a bit like a bad light bulb joke. How many economists does it take to screw in a light bulb? None. The free market will do it. No. Markets are marvelous servants. They're not such good masters. They're lousy religion. And we've been under a campaign of late to delegitimize the role of government. And I'm very grateful to each one of you who has stepped up to public service. Go back and read Adam Smith. Any of you know, by the way, what chair Adam Smith held at the University of Glasgow? Was he an economist? Philosopher. He helped invent the field of economics, but he was a moral philosopher. Remember that map of California? Smith's mental model was that we do business. This invisible hand operates within a moral construct. Tell that to Wall Street. Smith's mental model, as Ricardo pointed out, was also that capital is local. It is nationally bounded. Ricardo pointed out, if capital is not local, you're trading to absolute advantage, not comparative advantage. And not everybody has one. Everybody in theory, market theory, has a comparative advantage. Not everyone has an absolute advantage. And we should remember this when we begin to think about China. But all Smith said was that markets allocate scarce resources efficiently in the short term. They were never intended to take care of grandchildren. That's our job. That's the job of a free people coming together in a democracy and saying, what kind of a future do we want? That's your job. What we're going to need to do as we face the future challenges is not incrementally reasonable. Business as usual is a recipe for catastrophe. Sorry, you've chosen to hold office at a very difficult time in world history. We are going to have to confront the reality of the situation and come up with new ways of making policy. Here's one. This is not so new. This was in California back in the 80s. A brilliant man named Batinovich, who was chair of the California Public Utility Commission, observed that if as a utility your pocketbook gets fatter when you sell kilowatt hours, you have exactly zero incentive to not sell kilowatt hours. So he did a thing called decoupling and changed the rules so that the utilities became agnostic whether they sold more or sold efficiency. He then observed even that's not enough. You have to positively incentivize the utilities so they make more money when they help their customers become more energy efficient and cut their bills. By encouraging the utilities to help their customers cut their bills, PG&E spent $150 million. It got a share of the savings that its customers achieved, making it $40 to $50 million that year. And it saved the customers 9 times that much. Leveraged almost a $2 billion saving. California has now replaced that rule. That's now policy in California. And that's part of the reason utilities like Southern California Edison are building solar power plants. Utilities like PG&E are trying to figure out how to work with small businesses. Economic theory. In theory, practice works. In practice, it doesn't necessarily. Because we assume a free market. We do not have a free market. We may in energy have a fuel bazaar. You know the old economist joke, don't pick up that $20 laying on the sidewalk. If it were real, someone would have picked it up. Remember that company that my staff worked with? $650,000 by flipping a switch? That's a $20 bill lying on the ground. It's very real. Economic theory says it doesn't exist. Yes, it does. These are some of the barriers to people doing what makes sense. Capital misallocation. If you're a utility, you can get cheap 40-year money. If I want to put solar on my roof, except for the fact that we now have the tax financing, I would have to pay MasterCard interest rates. This is a misallocation of capital. In economic theory, it doesn't exist. In today's world, it sure as heck does. If anything I've said has surprised you, you don't have perfect information. Smith said markets work because the market actors have perfect information. Well, I sure don't. Organizational failures. How many of you know a utility that knows darned well efficiency is cheaper than building new supply, but the guy who's the CEO of the utility just really wants to build one more power plant because that's how he's going to get his name on it? This is not a market issue. This is a human issue. Regulatory failures. Every code in the country is obsolete. Why on earth would you bring a product to market now unless you know that customers want it? Perverse incentives. Yeah, we subsidize energy. Jim Woolsey reckons we subsidize fossil fuel about $250 billion a year. And then incomplete markets. If I save energy, how do I sell that saved energy? If I save water, I can't. On my ranch, if I don't use my water right, it's gone. Somebody's going to file on it. I have every incentive to be as wasteful as possible. I think markets are even more than you guys and regulation. Your real job, get out of the way. Identify state by state by state. What are the barriers? What are the stupid things that we're doing because it's the way we always did business? No harm, no foul. It may have worked 50 years ago. But let's identify what are the barriers and then clear them. Make markets work. Delaware recognized we have utilities to sell kilowatt hours, but if people want to buy efficiency, how do they do it? They created an efficiency utility. Cool idea. It's funded out of a share of the savings. Marin, community aggregation. The Marin Energy Authority just voted to allow people to buy energy not from PG&E, but from somebody who's going to provide it renewably. In my part of the world, Xcel Energy has a franchise with the city of Boulder. Well, the city of Boulder is beginning to say, what are we going to get for our franchise? It's better, I think, for the utilities to be the ones delivering these services of renewable energy, energy efficiency. Let's help them do it. Let's put on one page all the ways to save energy and all the ways to make energy, and then pick the cheapest. It will never, not ever, be supply. It will not be solar, it will not be wind, it will not be geothermal, it will be efficiency. Better insulation, better light bulbs, all of the green building technologies that, by the way, when you put them in a building, give you 6 to 16% higher labor productivity. They're worth doing just because of the gain in labor productivity, let alone the energy savings. Let's pick these first. Then start arguing about the supply. And you'll find when you do it this way, we will save cost effectively about 3/4 of the energy we now use, and then the supply is reasonably trivial. But let's not forget the little guys. Essentially every policy put forth by the feds, put forth by the states, put forth by communities is aimed at big companies. We're bringing out a tool, Solutions at the Speed of Business, a web-based implementation tool that enables small businesses to gain the sort of stuff I've just been telling you in very practical detail, kind of like having a personal tutor that walks you through it at a very affordable price point. This tool ought to be available to every little business in all of your communities. We're doing it now in the Bay Area with some CEO learning circles. One of our CEOs, having attended 2 sessions, by using some of the information we gave him, just saved himself $45,000. He stood up at a meeting, he said, this has been a real cost-effective investment for me. We need to help the little guys. They're half the economy, 90% of the non-governmental employers. And at the moment, they're clueless. You've heard this, yeah? Don't take a risk. The second mouse gets the cheese. Come on, let's be like this little guy. Whoa, back up one. You are leaders. That's your job. I rather like this line from Lord of the Rings, where Gandalf said, the rule of no realm is mine, but all worthy things that are in peril as the world now stands, those are my care. And for my part I shall not wholly fail if anything passes through this night that can still grow fair and bear fruit and flower again in the days to come. For I too am a steward, did you not know? In the story, it was these two, the fun-loving, unassuming little hobbits who liked their second breakfasts, who took on their shoulders this awesome task. And they were scared, and they didn't know where they were going. But in the end, all the kings and warriors and wizards could just stand by as the little people saved the world. I think real leadership is extraordinary courage by ordinary people. This is the only place in all the universe we know of where there is life. I'm very pro-life. Let's save it. Thank you.